As the moon slides in front of the sun, daylight starts to dim. Shadows sharpen and a strange dusk settles in.
It was really kind of eerie and strange when the light started to change.
Just before totality, anticipation mounts. Then, abruptly, day turns to night.
But then as soon as total eclipse happened, it was completely dark.
The black disk of the moon completely covers the sun, revealing the glow of the sun's corona.
Sort of like an orange color. The sky felt kind of like it was approaching night, and it got stormier looking, and everything was extremely still.
Planets and stars appear in the temporary night sky.
And I will never forget hearing the crickets coming out and singing during the total eclipse.
In those few minutes, you feel a surge of emotion and awe at the spectacle unfolding above you.
And there was a lot of cheering and shouting and celebration over it.
It's magical, mystical, an experience you'll never forget. Today, we are going off the radar to understand the astronomical phenomenon of eclipses.
What you observe and feel is just amazing.
How they're predicted, the different types, how to watch them safely, and where you should view them. I'm meteorologist Emily Gracie, and you're listening to Off the Radar, a production of the National Weather Desk. On the show, we dig deep into topics about weather, climate, the ocean, space, and much more. Our goal is to help you better understand the weather and to love it as much as we do. On Saturday, October 14th, the moon will move in front of the sun, partially blocking sunlight for much of the country. Then on April 8th, 2024, a total solar eclipse will be visible across a huge chunk of the United States. To discuss these exciting events and what viewers can expect to see and feel during an eclipse, I'm talking to Dave Jones from Storm Center Communications. Dave is a veteran of the weather and earth sciences industry. I met Dave about 20 years ago when I worked at the Weather Channel in Atlanta. We've stayed in touch over the years and crossed paths several times. Back in the 90s, Dave was a broadcast meteorologist for NBC4 in Washington, D.C., and he actually developed the very first TV weather website. In 2001, he founded Storm Center Communications and invented the GeoCollaborate technology, which enables geospatial data sharing in a real-time collaborative environment that works across all devices and platforms to improve decision-making. This year, NASA partnered with Storm Center Communications to make eclipse information accessible to broadcast meteorologists and educators. Here's my conversation with Dave Jones. All right, Dave Jones, a familiar name and familiar face, especially in the Washington, D.C. area. Thanks for joining us today, but we're talking beyond the atmosphere a little bit for this one. Well, we'll talk about the atmosphere too and the role it plays, but all eyes are going to be on the eclipse coming up here shortly. So can you break down what is happening on October 14th and why an annular is different than a total solar?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. And thanks so much, Emily, for having me on your podcast. It's always fun to talk about weather, whether it's in space or whether it's on the Earth here. And this eclipse coming up, which is on October 14th, it's a Saturday, is called an annular eclipse. And so that means that the moon is just far enough away from the Earth in its orbit where it's not going to block the entire sun. It's going to leave what scientists call a ring of fire around the sun. And that's going to be really spectacular because, you see this dark ball move in front of the sun and then this ring of fire around it.
Okay, so when you say the moon is just at the right distance, is there specifics as far as how far the moon has to be away from Earth in order to fall under this annular category?
Well, I guess it's anything further than 400 times. Like the moon is 400 times smaller than the Earth, and the Earth is 400 times smaller than the sun. So that's why we can see these eclipses. And of course, the moon has it's not a circular orbit. It's more of an oval type of orbit around the Earth, just like the Earth has an oval sort of orbit around the sun. And so when you can have an annular eclipse, and the moon can be a little bit further away, and then the ring of fire is a little bit larger, or it can be a little closer, and it's a little bit thinner. But when you get to that sweet spot of having a total eclipse, then everything changes, including many people's lives.
Yeah, I saw the one in 2017, and it was not an annular, correct?
No, that was a total solar eclipse that went in. I was in Salem, Oregon, covering it actually for NASA. We had a satellite truck there, so we were broadcasting it live, and we connected a heliospheric scientist, we call her Dr. Lika. She was live, and she was actually on with Veronica Johnson, and it was simulcast throughout many stations that they were broadcasting to and sharing that signal. And so that was really exciting because you could have the eclipse and you could see it from Oregon, and then have Dr. Lika talking about impacts that total solar eclipses have. And there are a lot of them.
That was a big one too, because it covered such a huge part of the U.S., right? So the number of people that could see that totality was just huge. This is a smaller group, correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, this eclipse that comes across is going to impact. It's going to be a lot of people. As a matter of fact, the annular eclipse that comes across is going to impact a lot of national parks. And it's really kind of cool because, national parks don't usually get overly crowded. And if you plan your trip for the eclipse, then you'll be able to interact with not only the beauties of national parks, but see the eclipse as well.
So the one that I saw, it was not an annular, but there was still kind of a glow right at totality around. So it wasn't the Ring of Fire. And now I have Johnny Cash in my head and can't get it out. But I'm sure everybody's going to be singing it for the next week. So what was I seeing when I looked up and did see that glow?
So that is really, some people almost say a spiritual experience, because when you look up and you see that glow, it's actually the corona of the sun. You're seeing the magnificent corona, which you cannot see during the day because the brightness of the sun just overshadows the corona. But when the moon moves in front of the sun, you can see that. And it's just spectacular. It's like almost seeing the sun's magnetic field and how it's changing and things like that, things shooting out. When we were observing the eclipse in Salem, Oregon, it was crystal clear. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. The humidity was low. It was risky because sometimes you can get that marine layer moving in to Salem, Oregon from the Pacific. So it was a little risky, but it was spectacular. And you could see that corona, and you could feel the temperature drop when the moon covered the sun in totality. But then you could also see these flares coming off the sun. And, that's the only time that you can see something like that, unless, your satellites launched from NASA looking and observing the sun all the time.
What is it going to be like with the annular eclipse compared to a total eclipse? Is it going to get as dark, or does it stay a little bit lighter?
So, that's a great question. So it will stay a little bit lighter. You don't get that path of totality. You get a path of annularity. And that path of annularity is still awesome because you can see the moon moving in front of the sun. But what you'll see, it's, because the size of the moon is slightly smaller than the apparent size of the sun, it's the outer edge of the sun that you'll see. And so it'll appear as this brilliant ring. And if you have your eclipse glasses on, as a matter of fact, this is what they look like. These are eclipse glasses. And, you put them on, I can't see you at all. It's dark, right? It's dark. These are
They're so attractive.
Yeah, this is great to put on like when I go to a restaurant and order something I don't like, or they have some Brussels sprouts or something. I'll just put these on it. Can't see what you're eating. But these glasses are critical to wear because, many people think strange things will happen if your parents, when you're growing up, telling you, don't look at the eclipse, you'll freeze, or, don't even, some people have
I haven't heard that one.
thoughts about what will happen if you look at a annular eclipse. You need to wear that eye protection during the annular eclipse the entire time, so you can see and observe that ring around the sun.
So it's not like the total eclipse where when that was in totality, you could actually take off the glasses.
Exactly.
The annular, you need to keep them on the entire time.
Exactly. So keep those glasses on the entire time. And if you don't have eclipse glasses, you can look at these eclipses indirectly, right? So you can create what's called a pinhole camera, and you can do it with anything. You take an index card, punch a little hole in that index card, and then turn your back to the eclipse and hold that card up, and the projection of the eclipse will be on the paper that you hold underneath of it, or the ground, or a table, or something like that. So you can see them and be safe. And the reason why you don't want to look up at an eclipse is because if it's not total, it's way too bright. You'll damage your eyes. It's, nothing spectacular or out of the ordinary that happens if you look up at an eclipse, except the light is just way too bright coming out of the sun, and you'll damage your eyes.
Okay, so we don't want to damage our eyes, and the pinhole thing sounds a little lame. So where can we get these glasses, and how can we make sure that they're safe? Surely there's some counterfeits out there.
Yeah, no, there's, as a matter of fact, on these glasses, and NASA sent these glasses to me. They are ISO 12312-2. That is the certification number that you have to have on those glasses, and they're printed on the inside of the glasses, right? So you can kind of see them right here, the ISO standard, and that will keep them. That means that they are safe to look at the sun through. And yes, there are counterfeits, and also if you may have glasses from the last eclipse, from the 2017 eclipse, you want to check the glasses themselves if they're wrinkled or they have any sort of crack in them, or they're coming away from the glasses. You may not want to use them because you could still damage your eye if there are creases in the glasses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. What about photography and taking videos and taking pictures? I've heard rumors that you can really damage your camera. Is that true if you take a picture of the eclipse?
No. It depends on how powerful, your lens is and what you're focused on the sun. But you can take pictures with your iPhone, your Android phones of the eclipse. It's, you can zoom in on it and take pictures. They do make filters for cameras that you can use that'll give you, some pretty cool pictures back. But I got to tell you, Emily, when you're at an eclipse, and if you're going to see that ring of fire, and you're going to experience totality, perhaps in the April 8th total solar eclipse, just watch it and take it in, because you know what? There's going to be probably 10,000 other professional photographers taking those pictures, and you'll be able to look at them afterward. But what you observe and feel is just amazing when either this annular eclipse or the total eclipse moves through.
Yeah, it's definitely a bonding experience, I think, with the people that you wind up in the same spot with, too. I remember just kind of spending hours with those people and waiting it out. And then it happened and we were all just so excited. And then we all just went home.
I know, right? And so we're even working at Storm Center. We're working with organizations like Verizon and AT&T because, when so many people travel to those paths of annularity or totality, they want to make sure that everybody has cell phone signals. And, when you get too many people in one spot, you can overwhelm those networks. So they really want to position additional antennas along that path. Also, because if there are any emergencies, there are going to be some strange things that happen. When the total solar eclipse on April 8th happens, people will be probably living under a rock and not know that a path of totality is going to pass over them. They'll be driving down the road and it's going to get pitch black dark in the path of totality. The street lights are going to come on and all that stuff. And they need to keep their eyes on the road. That's what they need to do, and stop safely and pull over. And if they don't have eclipse glasses, they should only look at the eclipse when it's in totality. That's when it's spectacular to look at. You can take those glasses off. But then when you start to see that diamond ring, that shine of the sun just coming through, and the Bailey's beads, which are incredible, that's when the sun is shining through the mountains and the mountain valleys on the moon. And you can see parts of the sun coming through, and you can actually see some topography on the moon. And so you start to see those Bailey's beads come out, and then you start to see that diamond ring, which is the initial flash of the sun getting brighter. Boy, it's just really amazing.
All right, let's talk about the role that weather plays in the eclipse. Kind of what we can learn from this short period of time when the sun disappears as well. So as far as weather, you said you had good clear skies for the last one. Where are you headed are you going to be viewing both the annular and the total coming up? And where are you going, and where are the good spots when it comes to predictable clear skies?
Yeah, I know. There's a bunch of, during, the nice thing about the annular eclipse, there's going to be, durations of annularity, for example, like in Dune City, Oregon. It's going to come ashore in Oregon. It could be 4 minutes and 29 seconds of annularity. So that is pretty awesome.
Does it vary? It varies in length in different locations?
It does. And as a matter of fact, the moon is moving somewhere between 5,800 miles per hour to when it gets down to Texas, it'll be moving about 1,700 miles per hour. And so the actual length of annularity varies, and it goes from like 4 minutes and maybe 40 seconds down to around Texas when it departs and goes over the Gulf of Mexico, about 4 minutes and 54 seconds. So that, if you're looking for the longest time of annularity, it's Corpus Christi, Christi, Texas. So
but do we have to worry about thunderstorms there?
I know, right? You're always thinking about that, and so if you're thinking about where you might want to be in a dry place, where the path of annularity moves over, places like New Mexico. As a matter of fact, Roswell is going to have a annularity. They're in the path of annularity, where the duration is going to be about 4 minutes and 40 seconds or so.
But they're going to have a good party.
I know that sounds like a party. May want to just bring your Halloween costume as well. And dress up, and there'll be a bunch of little green men watching this one, I think, in Roswell. The moon, when it approaches like places like Los Lunas, Edgewood, Roswell, New Mexico, the speed of the moon's shadow will be about 2,500 miles per hour. So it's pretty cool to see those sort of things happen. And then, when you get further up towards like Texas, Midland, Texas, they're going to be in the path of annularity. Odessa, Texas. Those places are normally pretty dry, right? So you have a better chance climatologically of seeing sunny skies, of course, in the desert Southwest where that path is.
So if you're not in that path that we see on the maps from NASA, are you still going to experience something?
Yeah, that's a great question. Everybody in the United States, in the continental United States, is going to experience the eclipse. And if you have these glasses and you can watch it safely, I'm here in Annapolis, Maryland. We can put them on, look up, and you'll see the moon blocking part of the sun. And you can go to NASA's website. If you just Google NASA eclipse, there's all sorts of information. As a matter of fact, they just released and introduced a new 2023 Eclipse Explorer. So you can actually get onto that website and move yourself around and see how you're going to experience eclipse, what it might look like. And so it's an interactive guide to the solar eclipse. And that happens for the annular eclipse coming up this October 14th, and also for the total solar eclipse on April 8th.
Okay, so how do they predict these so far in advance? Because, I think on the news, everybody always hears, like, enjoy this. The next one is in 4 million years. I feel like that's always the trend. So can you tell me how scientists know these paths so far in advance?
Yeah, well, it's great. And don't we wish as meteorologists, we could do this kind of calculation ahead of time.
Right.
But with eclipses, you can do that, right? It's all basically orbital mechanics. And so we know the orbits of the Earth. We know the orbit of the moon around the Earth. So scientists have come up with the calculations, and we can tell you when the next annular eclipse is going to cross, not just the United States, but anywhere in the world where they are going to happen. And that is used quite frequently by eclipse chasers. So they can make their hotel reservations 9 years ahead of time. But through those calculations, the next total solar eclipse after the April 8th one is on August 12th, 2045.
Wow. Now, is that the next one ever, or the next one that impacts the U.S., or the next one that impacts land?
The next one that impacts the U.S. And this is going to be actually a very cool one, because it's going to come ashore in Oregon, and it's going to dive down, and Miami will be in the path of totality. So, it's going to be very interesting, because, they will likely have king tides. We'll have sea level rise manifesting itself even more significantly by 2045. And then we'll have a period of total darkness. So I predict there's going to be a number of people in Miami that are going to think the world is ending. It's going to be an incredible experience, but we'll also be dealing with a lot of other issues too.
Interesting. Is there anything weird that happens given the fact that it just suddenly gets dark in the middle of the day? And I'm thinking about, you mentioned the tides, the moon impacts our tides. Does anything weird happen there? Does anything weird happen as far as temperature anomalies? Because all of a sudden the sun's not shining on us for 4 minutes. And I'm curious about other little things that are impacted by light and dark, anything from air travel to AM radio waves. Are any of these things impacted and prepared for?
No, that's a really great question. And, NASA has put together these programs where they have citizen science projects, and people are being asked to, observe when the eclipse comes around. For example, there has been theories and documented proof that animals behave differently during an eclipse. Anybody watching or listening to this podcast, if you want to see an eclipse and you're interested in animals, then there are zoos that will be in the path of the eclipse. And you can go, and I'm sure that NASA would be very interested in the video you take of a particular animal and how it behaves when the eclipse comes over. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
Cool idea.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can not just say, okay, I want to go to a place to experience the eclipse. But if I'm curious about something else, if you're curious and you go, you want it to be clear, you want to see it, you want to experience it, and you go to the desert Southwest, take a thermometer with you. Take a thermometer with you because you'll notice a change in the air temperature. You know, because you're blocking that solar radiation from coming in. Now, there will be solar radiations being absorbed by the ground, and you'll have that radiating up. So if the air is very dry, you may notice a distinct change in air temperature.
I wonder if the geoengineering folks pay attention to the difference that it makes and start thinking about what kind of fake moon can we come up with to block the sun every once in a while and lower air temperature? You know, I'm sure that's crossed somebody's mind.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, there are proposals that NASA has gotten about launching big mirrors up into space to reflect some of the sun out there. And so
I think I've seen that one. That and the giant sunshade, right? Like just pop up the umbrella.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've been talking about the moon and the role it's playing, but this is very much about the sun too. And the sun's kind of having a moment right now between the eclipses and then also the solar maximum that we're kind of getting into and all the auroras. So is there any correlation here? Does the level of the solar maximum have any impact on what we see when it comes to the eclipses?
Well, that's a great question too, because the sun goes through these cycles, these 11-year cycles. We're approaching at the end of 2024 into early 2025, solar max, which means the activity on the sun ramps up. And essentially when you have an eclipse, the moon is just, in the orbit where it's blocking that solar radiation and blocking part or all of the sun to give us a total solar eclipse. That doesn't have any effect on the sun's behavior.
So less relevant to the eclipse chasers and more relevant to the Northern Lights chasers, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. And, NOAA has a website you can go to and you can monitor the forecast for where is an aurora likely to be seen, what the percentage is and all that stuff. So that's very cool as well.
Well, Dave, is there anything with Storm Center Communications you want to share about? Any new books we should keep an eye out for or new events coming up that we should look out for?
Well, we have a couple of things going on at Storm Center. The first thing is that we're fortunate to be working with NASA for the eclipses. And we developed a technology called GeoCollaborate, which is a real-time collaborative technology. The first time ever we've been able to connect disparate systems together, laptops, mobile devices, computers. So what that really does is it takes away the frustration of having to search for trusted science data. NASA is funding us to deploy 2 instances of GeoCollaborate, one to make available to broadcast meteorologists so they can get access to some science data. And we're also launching an instance for educators. And so the other thing that we have coming out, I'm a co-author on a book with Dr. Ellen Prager. And this book, of course,
a familiar name on our podcast.
That's right. And this book is about answering some of the questions, common questions, some wacky, some not wacky, about weather, oceans, and climate change.
That's amazing. It sounds like you've got some great things going on. Anything else you want to share about the eclipse before we go?
Just to make sure that you get these glasses or look at the eclipse indirectly. Get out and enjoy it. But remember, you don't have to go far to see the eclipse. Everyone in the U.S. will be able to experience some form of the eclipse. If you want to go to the path of totality, plan your trip for what you want to do and what you want to see, There's going to be a lot of people, particularly on the April 8th, 2024 one. There's about 150 million people that live within a 2-hour drive of that path of totality.
Dave Jones, Storm Center Communications, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks, Emily. It's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me on the podcast, and everybody get out and experience nature.
Off the Radar is a production of the National Weather Desk. Make sure you're following the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. New episodes published every Tuesday. If you know someone interested in learning more about the annular or total eclipse, please share this episode with them. We'd also love you to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Let us know what you think of the show and give me some ideas for future episodes. Special thanks to Dave Jones for joining me today, and also to Matt Ferguson and Valerie Smith for participating at the beginning of this episode. I'm meteorologist Emily Gracie. Make it a great day.